Hello again, I am Blunty, and this is the new Razer Blade Stealth. My lovely loyal regulars will have seen my video from the Aussie launch event, but since then I've spent 2 weeks with it in my hands at home, just using it like a normal person uses a laptop. So now here comes my verdict. Now, as a quick refresher, this new Ultrabook from Razer is a bit of a departure for the brand in that it's not actually designed to be a gaming-focused device. This was made to be an aggressively spec'd and priced Ultrabook. That said, there is a door or two open here for gamers too, and I'll come back to that a little bit later. It is very competitively priced, and it outclasses much of the competition in the space in a few key ways. Firstly, it has a 1440p touchscreen, where many of its peers only have a 1080p non-touchy screen. There's also a 4K model available with 100% Adobe RGB coverage, which will be amazing for traveling content creators, but that's not the one I've been testing. It's humming along on a mobile 6th generation Intel Core i7 CPU running at 2.5 GHz, boosting up to 3.1 GHz, and with integrated Intel HD 520 graphics. 8 GB of dual channel RAM, and the model I've been testing has a 128 GB PCIe SSD storage device, but drives up to 512 GB are available. It also features Thunderbolt 3 USB DisplayPort and power over USB-C, 2 USB 3.0 ports, and a HDMI 1.4b port, a combo 3.5mm headphone and microphone port, and a 2-megapixel webcam. On the bling rather than performance side of things, it also has Razer's Chroma RGB keyboard, with the color of every key individually assignable, and the ability to set up multiple profiles for different situations and effects, and just showing off, I guess. You may also notice Razer have gone to a more standard font for the keycaps, where all their gaming line of laptops, and gaming keyboards for that matter, have that funky Razer font, which, although really nice, does bug the ever-living hell out of me because the only lowercase key on the whole thing is the R key, everything else is caps. But on the Stealth at least, that bizarre inconsistency is gone, and my mind feels clean once again. Now, on to what it's like to actually use. Well, firstly, this is the very first laptop with a touchscreen where I've not thought it was a stupid idea. The hinge is smooth but very solid feeling, so the screen doesn't flop around when you try and poke at the touchscreen. I also found myself using the touchscreen constantly, especially while lounging on the couch or in bed, because, unlike a phone or a tablet, when you hold it above your face and you get tired and you drop it on your face and you break your nose and blood goes everywhere, you can actually rest the laptop on your knees and still have the screen at a nice viewing angle. The problem is, with most laptops, that makes using the touchpad, now buried in your belly button, a pain in the neck. Here, of course, is where the touchscreen on this device suddenly becomes amazingly useful. I love it, and I never thought I'd say that about a touchscreen on a laptop. The chiclet-style keyboard is a very pleasant typing experience. The tactility is nice, it's quiet without feeling spongy, although the throw of the keys is slightly more shallow than I personally like. And using the keyboard while gaming, and yes, I will get to gaming in a moment, it was equally nice. The spacing and feel make for a good enough experience on the old WASADs. Now, I wasn't using the touchpad while gaming, of course, because that's just a deeply unpleasant thing to try and do on anybody's laptop. Instead, I was using a Razer Orochi, their wired and wireless combo travel-friendly gaming mouse, which, just on a side note before I move on, is a damn fine bit of gear, by the way. Let me know if you want a separate video on that. But back to the laptop and the touchpad. For normal use at the desktop and such, it was one of the best I've ever used, in fact, and I'm including the utterly superb Force Touch trackpad on my MacBook Pro in that comparison. It's not better than the one on the MacBook Pro, but it comes damn close. The Razer Stealth trackpad is beautifully smooth, it's a nice big size without getting in the way of typing, it is highly responsive, and the click has precisely the right amount of resistance and feedback. No marks against this touchpad, it is brilliant. The built-in speakers were on par with most other laptops of this kind. They are not spectacular, but certainly serviceable. They've got a clean, clear sound, slightly on the tinny side as you might expect, but with okay bass and no distortion at max levels.
Now, what you are seeing and hearing is the built-in web camera on the Razer Blade Stealth and also the built-in microphone. I'm not super impressed with the built-in microphone, as you can hear for yourself, like all built-in microphones on laptops pretty much. It's very sort of thin and a bit echoey, picks up a lot of room noise, and it's not spectacular. But the web camera is decidedly above average, goes up to 1080p 30 frames per second, which should be what I'm recording this at. More than enough for what you need for what a webcam is basically there for, video chat and stuff like that, or even on the road video blogs, I suppose, if you're a YouTuber, although if you're a traveling YouTuber, I'd recommend you take along a proper camera anyway, as well as a proper mic, of course, you'd be traveling with. But anyway, point is, web camera, nice clear image, good lighting, not too much sort of excess of motion blur and stuff like that. There's a little bit of motion blur, but it's not too bad. Certainly better than most web cameras built into these type of laptops. Anyway, so thumbs up there as far as I'm concerned.
The screen is nothing short of spectacular. It is super crisp, a very nice brightness and excellent viewing angles. The glass-topped touchscreen can make reflectivity an issue in very bright environments, but that's just something that sort of comes with the territory of this kind of screen, I'm afraid. And watching media is a deeply pleasant experience on this bright, colourful screen. The SSD on board uses PCIe lanes as opposed to the more common SATA type, which is a much faster way to go about it, but in testing I found real-world performance to be good, quite good as a matter of fact, but it's hardly the fastest SSD out there. Read speeds are actually very good, sequentials almost reaching 900 megabits per second, but it's the write speeds which slam on the brakes a bit. That said, for most people this won't even be a noticeable thing. Frankly, it's unlikely most kinds of workloads an Ultrabook like this will be used for will rely heavily on write speeds to the internal disk. More likely, if you're doing a lot of writing to a disk, you'll be doing media editing, and if you're a media editor, you're probably going to be using an external disk attached to the USB 3, or even more ideally, the Thunderbolt port. Under a CINEBENCH test, it benchmarks pretty much where you'd expect the dual-core mobile i7 and Intel 520 graphics to hit, edging out the i5s most other Ultrabooks use, but not breaking any records. Now, as for gaming, an area Razer's laptops have typically focused on, and indeed excelled in, as I said at the opening, this was never built as a gaming machine from the ground up. It was made to be an Ultrabook. But that said, even with just the onboard Intel graphics, you can get some basic gaming done quite acceptably indeed. Now, obviously, we fall far short of the specs asked for in games like Rise of the Tomb Raider, and even stripped right back, it's more or less unplayable. No shock there. But if we move along to more sensible expectations, like Enter the Gungeon, for example, a fantastic game if you haven't tried it, the Razer Blade Stealth buries this deep into the happy zone, running liquid smooth and superbly playable. Something a little more challenging on the 3D side of things, Superhot reaches a pleasantly playable 30 to 45 FPS on average. Something to note here too, the screen's native resolution is of course 1440p, so that's what most games will default to when you install them and boot them up first time. However, you are going to be much happier of course if you remember to switch back down to 1080p or even 720p. And that is the case for Superhot. The gameplay you're seeing is from a 720p session. Something like SMITE here can run very smoothly in the high frame rates you need with an online competitive game with middle-of-the-road settings, and again at 720p. Also at 720p with normal settings, the likes of even Tomb Raider can present a pretty playable experience, averaging close to 40 FPS in busy gameplay and benchmarking at 36 minimum and 54 maximum. But it is around about here where the line is drawn in the sand. We can't expect miracles from the integrated graphics after all. Now, there are two ways to big boy game on this machine, the first of which, of course, is with something like Steam's in-home streaming, which is the Doom gameplay you're now watching, streaming in from my own big rig desktop gaming PC. And of course, this is an Ultrabook, no Ethernet on board, so this was streaming over Wi-Fi, which I haven't mentioned until now, but like a test like this shows, it was very solid, very reliable, and very stable. Now, the other way to turn this mighty midget into a pixel-stomping hellbeast is to combine it with the Razer Core unit, which is an external graphics card host. You can put whatever desktop class graphics card you like in there and plug it into the Thunderbolt 3 USB-C connection on the Stealth, and without even needing a reboot, you'll instantly have a much more powerful gaming rig in front of you. Now, that mobile Core i7 CPU in here, of course, is a dual-core chip, not a quad-core hyper-threaded beastie like its desktop siblings, so that now becomes your main bottleneck for gaming in particular. And sadly, I do not have a Razer Core yet to test the real-world performance of such a setup, but there's no doubt that for a gamer that wants one ultralight machine to travel with, but wants a superior gaming experience when they're at home, sitting at their desk and whatnot, the combo of the Core and the Stealth is a very interesting option. So, in short, The Razer Blade Stealth is a damn fine Ultrabook. Plenty of power, it's built exquisitely, very solid and confident. The screen, the keyboard, the touchpad are all lovely to use and look at in general, and normal use, travelling around with it and using it at home and whatnot, is a very pleasant experience. The whole thing is lifted with 2 fingers light, so you barely know you're carrying it around, coming in at just 1¼ kilograms and barely more than 13 millimeters thick. And the only real disappointment is the battery life. It's not bad by any means, it's pretty decent. With general use you'll see 4 to 5 hours worth, but that's falling far short of the longer times offered up by some of the other leading Ultrabooks. But keep in mind also, those other machines are running less powerful CPUs and inferior screen resolutions, so that's where your trade-off in your decision-making lies. You sacrifice a bit of battery power, but you get a much more powerful CPU and a much nicer screen, and a touchscreen to boot. All I can tell you is that in all other respects, the Razer Blade Stealth is a superbly well-built little machine. I really like it. Thanks for watching. I am Blunty, and I will catch you next time.